All right, so let's talk about peptides. So peptides are a very popular subject. It seems to be online. Everybody's talking about peptides on various podcasts, or there's all these gurus and biohackers and influencers kind of playing around in the peptide space. So the way that I look at peptides now, it's kind of changed over the years. There's two camps. So there's camp one of your biohacker, research grade kind of peptide users. A lot of people in, kind of performance are in this, people who are, trying to enhance performance of some way, shape, or form. And then over here you have the clinical side. So the clinical application of peptides, which is going to be your medical providers, because this group of individuals has to use pharmaceutical grade. We're not allowed to use research grade. We can't even recommend them. And there's a litany of reasons why. I'm not going to go back and forth with anybody on here about that. It's just the way that the laws work. So in that, you got to figure out which camp you want to be in. So if you want to play in the biohacking and use a research grade product, that is at your own risk. There's some people out there that have books on this or things that you can download and all kinds of cheat sheets and things. And I think personally, that's potentially could be extremely harmful, but it's your body. If you want to do it, go for it, So if that's your goal, then hey, go for it. Try to find your own information and play around with a product that isn't, governed by anything. And if something were to go bad, there's nobody to sue, all right? Because they warned you. So, giving advice with zero repercussions is terrifying to me. Whereas on the clinical aspect side, we all have medical licenses, right? We have boards that we have to respond to. We've got the FDA all over us, and we have to use pharmaceutical grade products, which is made by a pharmacist. So it's a much more controlled environment that's going to be safe, as long as the provider knows what the hell they're doing with peptides. That's a whole nother subject. So those are the two camps. I happen to be in the clinical therapeutic use of peptide space. My personal experience didn't start that way in the clinical. I started using peptides personally back in 2016, mostly to heal myself, because there weren't things out there that I was finding that was actually moving the needle for me personally in my health journey and my health goals. So I started to dip into a lot of the Russian peptides. And those peptides have been around for a really long time, and they're relatively safe. So, and then there's other countries where peptides are actually drug approved. So you could get those. It wasn't easy, but you could get them and use them. And I found profound benefits. Then kind of late 2016, the clinical use of peptides kind of started to hit the stage. So that's when things really started cranking in terms of an educational platform, in terms of masterminds. And, it started off with a relatively small group of people. And the learning was amazing. All right. Everybody was helping everybody. Everybody was learning, sharing ideas, how to use it, best practices. And being that we're all clinicians, we're doing labs on our patients, right? So we're doing labs and we're seeing results and we're treating disease processes with them, so we're not guessing, we're using tools and then measuring its efficacy. So with this small group of people, we're back and forth, how to best use these things. Stuff works great, stuff doesn't work at all. Oh wait, these are causing some issues. What are you seeing in the clinic? And it was an amazing time in the peptide learning journey. And then kind of later on, 2018, 19 into 20, kind of the shit hit the fan in the peptide space. The FDA started to get involved, and they just really started to come down on us for no good reason, because all we're trying to do is help people with some tools that we had that were, modulating cellular function and just working. So I know that I personally stopped talking about peptides. I self-censored at that point. That's why if you follow me on anything, I haven't made a video in a while, because I was worried, because since I use them so heavily in clinical practice, I didn't want anybody knocking on my door. So I kind of removed myself from any type of video or posts about peptides at all, and I still very little. I have hope for our future. I hope that kind of with the politics the way they are, whether you sit on one side or the other, doesn't matter to me. What I like is that hopefully I'll be able to speak freely about some of the things that we do in the clinic and not worry about persecution about what we say. Hopefully some of the FDA rules gets a little looser so that we can, bring some more of these therapies to the people much faster from the clinical side. I don't advocate anything on the research side, kind of the biohacker side whatsoever. So, that's kind of why I'm putting this, out there is there are a lot of us that are really, really good with peptides in a clinical space. You just don't see us online, all right? So we're the ones that are behind the scenes doing it all day, every day in the clinics, but we're not blasting it online. And typically the ones that are the loudest online and the peptides use them very little. That's kind of what I found out with my experience is, a lot of these peptide provider gurus that just posting constantly about peptides and things like that. When you really drill it down to how much are they using it in the clinic, it's very little or rare. And then there's some of us like us that, we've been using it at scale for many, many years. And when I mean scale, I mean thousands and thousands and thousands of peptide cycles with thousands of people that are monitored with blood work. So those are the ones that you want to find if you're looking for a clinically guided peptide experience or journey, whatever you want to call it. Because peptides aren't without harm. They're relatively safe because they're cellular messengers. But if you don't do them in the right order, sometimes you can make somebody worse, all right? Much worse. So there has to be a methodical strategy to peptides. There is no such thing of buying a stack online, all right? If you're buying a stack, just a random stack, and something goes sideways, you're not gonna know which one it is. So I don't think anybody should ever quote stack peptides at all. You do them one by one, and then you start layering them based on somebody's goal and how their body and their biochemistry is responding in labs and in subjective data, which is their belief on how they feel or look. So that is probably the best way to do it. Maybe not buying them in a stack, especially not buying them in a stack online from some facility. You have no idea where they're coming from, and there's absolutely no accountability. And then that brings me, I might as well just bring it up and just piss everybody off. Then there's medical providers and online companies that have boards of medicine backing and things like that, and they sell peptides online, and you can just order them online by just filling out like a little form that's supposed to be a history and a physical with no labs, no data, nothing, and then you can just buy them. And they're even pharmaceutical grade at least, but they're pharmaceutical grade. Once again, there's no theory or logic behind that. It's just they're selling you a product at that point. And I personally believe that's relatively unethical. And that's something that I will never do. And then even worse than that is if you're a medical provider and you're using research grade products and then selling them in that way, shame on you. I don't think that's the way that we need to be doing it. There's plenty of money to be had. There's plenty of people to help. That's just not something that we need to do just to make a quick buck. So that's kind of my thoughts on peptides and where they're at and where they're going. I think there's a lot of cool things. Everybody seems to be on a GLP or a GLP-GIP right now. Big pharma is, betting heavy on peptides. I think AI is going to really start coming up with some cool peptide structures that we don't even know exist. So I think the future for peptides is amazing. Our access to them may be limited because it takes a very long time to get a peptide drug approved and go through all the channels to make that happen. But sometimes we can get our hands on them beforehand and clinically and start using them and playing around with them. So that's kind of just my Peptide 2.0 talk. Maybe I'll have a friend of mine on and we can really deep dive into some other aspects of peptides that are going on right now. But anyway, thanks for listening.